You ever sit in your own kitchen, watching the steam rise from your coffee, and wonder when exactly your house stopped feeling like home? It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in quietly, an empty chair here, a cold glance there, until one day you realize you're just the guy who pays the bills, nothing more. My name is Frank Walters. I'm 55 years old. I've lived in the same house for over 30 years, raised two boys here, tiled the kitchen floor with my own two hands, painted every wall myself, twice. I built this place for family, for memories, but it didn't quite turn out the way I thought it would. See, I have a son. His name is Evan. He's 27 now. Smart, capable, independent. Always has been. But somewhere along the way, he also became cold, detached. Like I was a phase he outgrew. I don't remember the last time he called just to say hi. Birthdays turned into texts. Holidays became obligations. He lives 3 hours away but acts like it's another continent. And I get it. We raise them to leave, right? That's the whole point of parenting. But what no one tells you is how quiet it gets after. How strange it feels to pour your life into someone and then become a footnote in theirs. My wife, Carol, she used to say I was too hard on Evan, that he needed space, that he'd come around eventually. But she passed away 5 years ago, pancreatic cancer, fast, brutal, and Evan, well, he was there for the funeral. He even stayed a night. Then he was gone again. No calls, no visits, nothing. So, yeah, that's the space he needed, I guess. I wasn't angry, not really. Just tired. Tired of being forgotten. Until one November evening changed everything. It was cold out. The kind of night where even the wind feels personal. I'd just come back from the grocery store, arms full of too many things for one man to eat alone. And there he was. A kid, couldn't have been more than 15, sitting on my porch steps. No coat, just a thin hoodie and torn jeans, shoes soaked through from the slush. He stood up when he saw me, like he was ready to bolt. "Don't worry," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You hungry?" He didn't speak right away, just nodded. Slow. I opened the door, held it for him. He hesitated, then stepped inside. That's how I met Jordan. He didn't talk much at first, didn't ask for anything either. He ate the grilled cheese I made like it was a feast, drank his hot cocoa like he hadn't tasted warmth in weeks. I didn't press him that night, just gave him a blanket, let him crash on the couch. Next morning, I found him neatly folding it at the edge, like he didn't want to leave a trace. "You can stay another night," I said. He blinked at me like I'd offered him the moon. He stayed, then another night, then a week. Eventually, the story came out in pieces. His mom had OD'd 2 years ago, foster homes, group homes, temporary shelters. He'd been through 5 placements. No one kept him, no one wanted to. So he stopped waiting to be wanted. He'd been couch hopping since summer, sleeping behind dumpsters some nights, not stealing, not begging, just existing. I called child services like you're supposed to. They said they'd send someone. I told them to take their time. They took that to heart, never showed up. So I didn't push it. He started helping around the house without being asked. Sweeping, doing dishes, chopping wood. I'd come home from work and find the trash out, the driveway cleared. He never asked for anything. Not clothes, not allowance, just a place to be. And over time, I stopped seeing him as a guest. He had his own room by then, the spare upstairs. He started calling me Frank first. Then, one day, Dad. It hit me harder than I expected, not because I needed to hear it, but because he needed to say it. Evan found out 6 months later. He came by, unannounced, for the first time in nearly 2 years. I remember Jordan was out back, sanding a birdhouse we'd built together. Evan walked in, looked around like a stranger. "What's this?" he asked, gesturing toward the extra shoes at the door. "I took someone in," I said. "Kid needed a place." Evan's jaw tightened. "You replaced me?" I blinked. "Number you left." He didn't stay long. A week later, I got an email. No subject. Just 3 lines. "If he's your son now, then let him take care of you. I'm done. Don't contact me again." I stared at those words longer than I should have, read them over and over. Then I clicked archive and never opened it again. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. Of course it did. Evan is my blood. I held him in my arms when he was born, taught him to ride a bike, stayed up through his fevers. I loved him fiercely. But love's not just what you give. It's also what's returned. And Jordan? He gave it back. In quiet, solid ways. Like showing up. Like caring if I ate. Like asking how my day was and actually listening. Jordan never asked me why Evan stopped visiting. He must have known. Kids like him, they read between the lines. They're used to being the reason people leave, even when they're not. But he didn't bring it up, and I didn't volunteer. Instead, we just kept living. Quiet mornings with 2 mugs of coffee, 1 black, 1 half milk and sugar. Afternoons fixing up the old shed out back. Evenings where we watched old westerns, trading quotes like we were born in another time. He liked Clint Eastwood. Said there was something honest in a man who didn't say more than he had to. I told him, "You'd get along with your grandmother." He just smiled. It wasn't perfect. There were moments. Sometimes I'd walk past Evan's old room, and a pang would hit me so fast I'd forget how to breathe. Sometimes Jordan would flinch at loud noises or tense up when a stranger knocked. But we were figuring it out. Not as a replacement, as something new. He was 16 when I officially applied for guardianship. The caseworker blinked when she saw me. Sorry, you're not related?" "Nope." "And you're not a foster parent on file?" "Nope." She looked at Jordan. He sat up straight, clean hoodie, cut his hair that morning. "He lives with me," I said. "Goes to school, does well. He's family." She frowned at the paperwork. "It's highly unusual." "I know, but so is being left behind 5 times. Her face softened. A few months later, it was official. I was his legal guardian. It didn't change much in the house, but it changed everything for him. When he turned 18, we had steaks on the grill and a cheap chocolate cake from the gas station. He insisted on putting the candles in himself. They spelled OLD. I asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said, "Nothing you haven't already given me." I laughed it off. But that one stuck with me. By then, Jordan had a part-time job at a hardware store across town. He was saving up for trade school, wanted to learn carpentry, said he liked working with things that didn't lie. "Wood tells the truth," he'd say. "It cracks when it's weak. It holds when it's strong." That kid had wisdom in him, sometimes more than I did. About 2 years after Evan's email, I got a call from my sister. "Frank, you might want to sit down." Evan had been in an accident. Car flipped on a wet road. Broken leg, concussion. He was in the hospital, conscious, but in pain. I drove up that night, didn't think, just packed a bag and went. When I walked into the room, he looked surprised. Not glad, not angry, just surprised. "You came," he said, voice hoarse. "I'm still your father," I replied. He didn't answer. I sat by his bed for hours, watched the machines beep, watched the color come back to his face. We didn't talk much. Before I left, I placed a photo on the bedside table, one I carried in my wallet. Evan, age 5, on my shoulders, his arms in the air like he'd conquered the world. He looked at it for a long time. "Who's the other kid in the photo?" he asked quietly. "There isn't one," I said. "Just you." He nodded, turned his head away. That was the last time I saw him. 3 months later, I got a letter. Not from Evan, from his lawyer. Apparently, Evan had inherited some money from Carol's side of the family. He was using it to relocate, new city, new job, no contact, no return address. Just a check enclosed for $1,500 and a note that read, "For everything you paid for, that wasn't mine to take. This is yours." I didn't cash it. Still haven't. Jordan saw the envelope in the trash. He didn't ask, just picked up the mail the next day like usual. I never held what Evan did against Jordan. It wasn't his fault, but I also didn't expect Jordan to go above and beyond like he always did. When I turned 60, he threw me a barbecue in the backyard, invited the neighbors, made ribs from scratch. He handed me a gift, a wooden frame, handmade. Inside it was a photo of us sanding the birdhouse years ago. On the bottom, he'd carved a single word, chosen. I cleared my throat and tried to joke, but the lump wouldn't budge. He said, "I know I wasn't born your son, but you showed up like one, and that made me want to show up too." That year, I rewrote my will. No drama, no bitterness, just a choice. I left the house to Jordan, the savings too, the tools in the garage, the land, the memories. Evan's name wasn't on it. It wasn't revenge. It was reality. You don't give a legacy to someone who sees you as an obligation. You give it to someone who held your hand without being asked, who stayed when it got hard, who never made you feel like second best. I still keep that photo in my wallet. Evan, age 5, arms in the air. It's a reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I had the capacity to give, and how sometimes love finds its way back through unexpected doors. About a year after I changed the will, Jordan asked me to come with him to an open house. "I want your opinion," he said, "and maybe your gut instinct." It was a modest place, single story, decent yard, nothing fancy, but you could tell it had good bones. He walked through each room slowly, like he was memorizing every creak and shadow. "This feels like something I could build on," he said, and he wasn't talking about the structure. We stood in the unfinished basement, and I saw it in his eyes. Stability. That quiet kind of ambition that doesn't shout, but stays until the job is done. He didn't ask me for money, didn't ask me to co-sign, just wanted me there. So I was. He bought the place a month later, moved in with second-hand furniture and a toolbox. He called it his blank canvas. Every few weekends I'd drive over. We'd work side by side, patching drywall, painting trim, fixing leaky pipes. I watched that house become a home, not just because of what he built, but because of who he let in. That winter, he met someone. Her name was Rachel, school counselor. Kind eyes, steady voice, the kind of person who makes you feel like you're already forgiven just by sitting across from her. He brought her over for dinner one night, nervous as hell. I grilled steaks. He knocked over a glass. Twice. Rachel laughed and said, "If he talks about you this much when you're not around, I figured it was time I met the legend." I smiled, but inside, something softened. I hadn't been introduced to anyone like that in years. Not since Carol. A few months later, Jordan called me out of the blue. "You busy?" "Just finishing a crossword." "You want to come with me somewhere?" "Where to?" He paused. Something important. We drove in silence most of the way. He had this tightness in his jaw I hadn't seen since the early days, when he didn't know if he was allowed to trust what he had. We pulled into a cemetery. He led the way, quiet, steady, and there it was, a modest headstone. Angela Morris, beloved mother. 1979 முதல் 2010 வரை Jordan stood there for a long time. She was funny, he said. Not the ha-ha kind. The kind that used timing like a weapon. I didn't speak, just stood beside him. I used to dream she'd show up one day, knock on the door and say it was all a mistake. He sniffed, looked down. But she's been gone longer than I had her. Sometimes I wonder if I made her up. He pulled something from his jacket pocket. 2 flowers, hand-carved from wood. One dark, one light. I made these, he said, for her and for Carol. He placed them gently at the base of the stone. Then he turned to me. You don't have to say anything, he said. Just thanks for showing me not all people leave. Rachel and Jordan got married the next fall. Small backyard wedding, string lights, laughter, people hugging like they meant it. I walked him down the aisle. We didn't rehearse it, didn't plan it. He just came up to me, straightened his tie, and said, "Come on, old man." When the vows were over and everyone was eating pie instead of cake, Rachel's mother pulled me aside. "I don't know what you did," she said, "but you helped raise a good man." I didn't know what to say, maybe because I hadn't thought of myself as raising anyone in a long time. 2 years later, I became a grandfather. Not biologically, not legally. But none of that mattered when they placed a swaddled, wrinkly, red-faced little girl in my arms and said, "Meet Clara." She had Jordan's eyes, the same quiet strength behind them. Rachel said, "She's lucky to have you." I said, "I'm the lucky one." By the time I turned 70, my knees reminded me every morning that ladders were a younger man's game. But Jordan still called for help on projects. I think sometimes just to keep me busy. One summer we were fixing his porch rail when he said, "You ever hear from Evan?" I wiped sweat from my brow and shook my head. "Not since the check." Jordan nodded. "He doesn't know what he lost," he said. I didn't answer, because truthfully, I didn't either. Not in full. You can't measure absence. You just feel it, like a missing piece in a puzzle you stop trying to finish. Clara started drawing. A lot. She'd bring me stick figures and wobbly hearts, each labeled Papa Frank. One day she asked why Jordan didn't call me Dad all the time. I said, because he came into my life when he was already growing up. But that didn't stop him from being my son. She thought for a moment, then said, "So that means I'm your granddaughter. Because I stayed?" I smiled. Exactly. One autumn morning, I got a letter. No return address, no handwriting I recognized. Inside was a photo, me and Evan, from that same photo I'd left in the hospital. Only this one had been framed, with a note attached. I was wrong. I see that now. I don't expect anything. Just wanted to say that. E. No apology, no request, just acknowledgement. Jordan saw it on the kitchen table that evening. He didn't say much, just placed his hand on my shoulder. That was enough. The years kept rolling, as they do. Rachel went back to work part-time. Clara started school. Jordan opened a small custom woodworking shop. He called it Second Grain, said it was about second chances, wood that others overlooked, reshaped into something lasting. The name fit him better than anything I could have come up with. He made tables that looked like they'd been around for a century, frames that told stories just by the way they held the light. Sometimes I'd sit in the back, watching him plane a board or sketch out a new design. He never rushed, never cut corners, said the wood deserved better. One rainy afternoon, Clara found an old photo album tucked behind the couch. She sat on the floor flipping pages. Carol, baby Evan, the house still half-painted. "Who's this?" she asked, pointing to a picture of Evan at his high school graduation. "That's my other son," I said. "Your dad's brother." She tilted her head. "How come I've never met him?" I hesitated. She was only 7, but she was sharp. Sometimes people get lost, I said, and sometimes they don't find their way back. She nodded like she understood more than I meant to say. Then she said something that stuck with me. Maybe he needs a map. That night, I pulled out the letter Evan had sent years ago, still in the same plain envelope, still tucked in the drawer where I kept spare screws and half-dead pens. I sat with it a long time. Then I picked up the phone. He answered on the fourth ring. Yeah? It's Frank. Silence. I got your letter, I said. Took me a while to respond. 5 years is a while, he said, but there was no bite in his tone. Yeah, it is. More silence. Then, I'm in Portland now. Work in logistics. Got a dog named Benny. I smiled, despite myself. Good name for a dog. We talked for 15 minutes, mostly about surface things, the weather, his work, the price of gas. But there was something under it, like a window cracked open on a stuffy day. Before we hung up, he said, I'm glad you called. And I said, me too. That was all. No dramatic reunion, no emotional breakthroughs, just connection. Sometimes that's enough. Over the next year, we spoke now and then, never often, but steadily. He never asked about the will. I never offered details. We were past that point, and maybe never meant to go back. Jordan knew. I didn't hide it. One evening, I brought it up over dinner. Rachel had made lasagna. Clara was coloring. I've been talking to Evan, I said. Jordan set down his fork. I figured. You okay with that? He shrugged. Are you? I thought for a moment. Yes, I think I am. Jordan nodded, took another bite. That was the whole conversation, but it said enough. I was 74 when the doctor said the word congestive. I nodded, listened, took the pamphlets, went home and stacked them on the counter next to the coupons and Clara's drawings. I didn't tell anyone right away, not because I was scared, but because I needed time to think clearly. After a few weeks, I sat with Jordan on the porch. You remember when you first got here? I asked. Yeah, he said. I remember the grilled cheese. I smiled. You were a skinny kid in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, and I had no idea what I was doing. He looked over at me, concern creeping into his eyes. I'm fine, I said, just thinking about beginnings. Then I told him. Everything. He was quiet a long time. Then he said, You want me to come to the next appointment? I nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. He patted my knee. Then I'm there. Treatment started. They were manageable. Clara began reading me stories when I was tired. Rachel brought soup I didn't ask for. Jordan drove me to every appointment. Never complained. Just drove, waited, drove back. I offered him gas money once. He said, Don't insult me. That Christmas, Evan called. Said he was passing through town. I told him the door was open. He showed up in a blue coat and boots that looked too new. He'd aged, less sharp around the jaw, more tired behind the eyes. But when he stepped inside, Clara ran to the hallway, eyes wide. You're Papa Frank's other son? He blinked, stunned. Then he crouched. I guess I am. She handed him a gingerbread cookie with one leg missing. Mine broke too, she said. Still tastes good. Evan looked at me. I nodded. He stayed an hour, then 2. We didn't try to fix anything. We just sat. A family, sort of. It wasn't whole, but it was real. A month later, Jordan came over with a box. Inside was a wooden bench, polished, simple, sturdy, etched across the back. Time doesn't erase love, but love can outlast time. He said, for the porch, figured it was time we had something permanent out here. I didn't know what to say, so I just sat on it. And he sat beside me. That's how we spent most evenings after that, watching the light fade, letting things settle, The porch bench became our rhythm. Jordan and I sat there in silence more than we spoke. It wasn't because there was nothing to say. It was because we'd already said the most important things, with actions, not words. Clara would join us sometimes, wrapped in a blanket, sipping cocoa, humming to herself. She never asked about my health. I think she knew, but didn't want to disturb the stillness we'd earned. Rachel brought her guitar out one evening, played a soft tune that Carol used to hum. I closed my eyes and let it wrap around me like warm fog. It didn't feel like sadness, more like remembering the parts of yourself you thought were lost forever. That spring, I started recording stories, not for the world, just for Clara. Old cassette tapes at first, then Rachel helped me digitize them. Each one began the same. "Hi, Clara. It's Papa Frank. Here's one for the quiet nights." I told her about Carol and how she made coffee so strong it could wake the dead. About Evan as a baby and the time he tried to flush a sandwich down the toilet. About Jordan showing up on my porch, cold and hungry, and how warmth doesn't always start with fire. I told her that love isn't about who you make, it's about who you show up for, over and over again. One morning, I found Jordan sanding the porch rail again, same spot we'd fixed years before. He looked up and smiled. "Guess it's got a weak spot here," he said. I nodded. We didn't talk about what that really meant. That summer, I asked them to take a photo of all of us, on the porch, under the string lights, with Clara in the middle holding both our hands. When I looked at it later, I saw something I hadn't expected. Peace, not perfection. Not everyone in their rightful place, but everyone who chose to be there. That was enough. By the time autumn rolled in, I was slower on my feet. Jordan adjusted his schedule to come by earlier. Clara read longer books now, her voice more confident. One evening, after a particularly quiet dinner, I looked at Jordan and said, "You saved me." He looked startled. "What?" I didn't know it at the time, didn't realize how empty things had become, but you showing up on that porch, it gave me a second life. He swallowed hard. "You saved me first," he said. We didn't talk after that, just sat. The silence said everything. On my last recorded tape, I said, "Hi, Clara, it's Papa Frank. If you're hearing this, I'm probably off somewhere where knees don't ache and old wood never splinters. I want you to know something. Life won't always give you what you expect. Sometimes it'll give you even less. But every once in a while, it gives you someone who reminds you what it means to be seen. Don't chase perfection. Just look for the ones who stay." When I passed, it was quiet. Jordan was beside me, holding my hand. Rachel was in the hallway, humming something soft. Clara had fallen asleep on the chair. There were no goodbyes, no drama, just warmth, just peace. The bench is still on the porch. Jordan sands it every spring, out of habit. Clara's older now. She sits on it alone sometimes, or with friends, or with her sketchbook. The house has new pictures on the walls, a new dog, some different furniture. But the foundation, both in the house and in their hearts, hasn't changed. Evan came once, the following Christmas. He stayed for 2 days, brought Clara a book, Jordan a carving chisel, and left a note on the nightstand in the guest room. It read, "You were the better man. Thank you for not hating me." Jordan didn't say anything, just folded the note and tucked it into the box of letters I left behind. Sometimes Clara plays those old recordings. She says they help her sleep, and every now and then, when the light hits just right and the porch is quiet, she swears she can still hear my voice saying, "Hi, Clara, it's Papa Frank. Here's one for the quiet nights."